Hi, I'm Drew Hutchison, and you're tuned to Local Bias. We cover topics that are germane to the Western Massachusetts, and in this case, what we're talking about is germane to the entire Commonwealth, and I'm referring to equity theft. What is equity theft? Well, to answer that question is Al Norman. Al, thank you for joining me on the Local Bias.
Happy to do it, Drew.
So, what is equity theft?
Well, home equity theft is the legal process.
Theft, right.
It's a legal process by which towns steal money from homeowners by taking the tax title to their home when they don't pay their taxes on time, and then taking their home to auction, selling it, and keeping all the equity in the home, even if it's far in excess of what the homeowner owed in taxes. For example, I own a $300,000 house in Greenfield, let's say. Wish I did. But it's owed. I owe about $30,000 in taxes, and collection costs. Maybe the taxes were maybe $20,000. Add on the fees for lawyers and so forth. I now own the town $30,000. I've got a $300,000 home that I own free and clear, no mortgage left. The city, without telling me, they can tell me that I owe taxes, but without having a hearing, they can go to court and take the title to my house, and then take that house to auction, and let's say it sells for $300,000. That's 10 times what I owed. Mm-hmm. The town will recoup 10 times my debt and keep it, and I'm broke because they've taken all my equity. That's home equity theft.
That must be exceedingly rare.
Oh, I wish it was. Let me show you. This is something that was in the newspaper in April. This is the list of properties that were taken by the city of Greenfield just in April. It's 41 properties. And by the way, some of these properties are kind of interesting. There was one I saw that owed, I think it was $22.84, owned by two people who had property on the French King Highway right next to the industrial park. So, which is interesting because there's controversy now over marijuana use out there. But this parcel, which I think was 7/10 of an acre, which is a lot more than, I'm sorry, it's 1.5 acres. They owed $22.65 and their title was taken. Now they can get it back by paying the $22.65. But when you're talking about somebody who owes $30,000, $40,000, they don't realize that they have the right to redeem that property, that the word is redeem. Within 1 year, they can pay the city back for what they owe and get the title back to their property. But the problem is that the town never tells them that.
Well, they tell them in the legal notice. Or they don't tell them.
No, they don't.
Oh, but they don't tell them it's redeemable.
No, in the legal notice, they don't tell them. What happens next, Drew, is that after these people get an 8-point typeface legal ad in the paper that says we're going to take your title, then the next thing that happens is they get one of these. This is a notice of service that comes from a uniformed member of the sheriff's department, and the sheriff brings someone over to your house with this notice, and inside it says notice to quit, and it starts off with these words: "Dear tenant." Now this is somebody who thinks they still own their house. It says, "Dear tenant, you are hereby notified and requested to vacate the premises at blank address, which you now rent. You will have until February 1st of 2022 to vacate the above premises, or this is the tax collector, actually this is a lawyer, it doesn't even say tax collector, I will go to the Greenfield Housing Authority, Housing Court, and I will seek permission to evict you." So all of this is happening, and you thought, well, I know I owed some taxes, but I've just lost my house. Now I'm a squatter, and I have to be out because I'm a tenant and I'm being kicked out, evicted. So this is how the Commonwealth has this law in the books for years, decades, called Chapter 60, Section 53. And it says that every single city and town in Massachusetts has the right to take the title to somebody's home and steal all of their equity, if there is equity. And a lot of these places, a lot of these elderly people, they've paid off their house free and clear.
Well, and that's the thing is, if you've already paid off your house, it makes it more likely for this to occur because the mortgages, if you have a mortgage on your home, generally the property taxes are included in the mortgage payments.
Yes, and you actually raise an interesting point. If I'm a bank and you owe me money, and I take you to court to get back, you haven't paid your taxes, I'm sorry, you haven't paid your mortgage payments for 7 or 8 months, I can take you to court and go after what you owe me plus legal costs and interest and all that legal costs. I can't take a penny more if I'm the bank. So if I sell your house, if you owe me 30 grand, but your house is worth 300, every penny that I collect up to 30,000 as the bank is mine, but the rest goes back to you. So even banks aren't allowed to do this home equity theft, only cities and towns. So it's so grossly unfair and I think unconstitutional because you don't get due notice. And you're not getting just compensation. These are violations of the U.S. and the state constitution. This law is being challenged now because of its unconstitutionality, but it's still on the books.
Have you surveyed other towns? Do they all follow this same process? I mean, are they taking advantage of this?
Yes. To my knowledge, every town that I've checked puts like I've tracked these in the Greenfield Recorder as an example. Other towns that I've seen recently, like Ashfield and Conway, Ashfield just listed 19 properties, Conway 4 properties that they're taking, all of them within the past few weeks. So I would say yes, most of the towns in the Commonwealth are doing this. If there's any that aren't, I haven't learned of them. But they all believe, and in fact the Mass Municipal Association, which represents all of these cities and towns, they believe that this is perfectly ethical and legitimate to do because they think it's a source of money that the towns deserve, that when people don't pay their taxes, take the whole thing. I don't know, the idea that they have a right to all the equity that I've built up in my home because I've fallen behind during a pandemic when I wasn't working, whatever the reason. I'm not saying that people shouldn't pay their taxes, but I'm saying even worse, the city should not collect more in taxes than I owe. It's just simply unethical and immoral.
It's patently unethical and immoral. I can't imagine why anyone would feel good about this. And yet there are probably some people saying, oh, hey, look at how much money we saved the town.
Well, it's even worse than that, Drew. In a column that I wrote recently, I quoted the tax collector in Greenfield who put an endorsement on a website that was owned by the auction company that the city of Greenfield uses. So public official puts an endorsement on a private company's website that says, quote, we are so pleased with the outcome of the auction. The company, the auction firm, made the process so easy and our profits are greater than expected.
Profits.
And I'm thinking, wait a minute, we're in the business of trying to house people and make sure they're adequately housed, not creating homelessness. And here we are saying that we're happy to take a profit from somebody who is now homeless. And by the way, one of the people that they took a house from about half a year ago, a very choice piece of property up on the Ridge Road in the Trail region, that gentleman that owned the house is now living in Turner's Falls in a rented apartment. So at least they're not homeless, but they lost about $240,000 in equity, and I'm not sure they even know it. Even now, I'm not sure that they realize how much money the town stole from them legally.
Well, once again, it comes back to this is more likely to happen with senior citizens who have paid off their mortgage. And having worked with senior citizens, I can tell you, and actually my own case, I've almost been late on my excise bill or my water bill so many times. I almost always paid in person because, the bill comes in and you set it down and then later it's, you've come across, oh, it's due today. That's happened to me where I've run up the day it's due and got it in just in this nick of time.
Well, and I don't need to remind you that Greenfield Community Television was originally on this list. Not because you owed money, but because of a clerical mistake in terms of filing for your abatement. Because
we're a nonprofit.
You didn't owe this money.
Right.
I mean, this is the kind of sloppiness that happens sometimes in city government where people are just not, their rights are not being protected. And I was thinking, what are they going to come do? The city is going to take the studio?
But yes.
I mean,
apparently they can do that.
Yeah, well, They could give it back to Comcast and maybe turn it into an ice rink. Who knows? But these people are doing things that just aren't right.
So how does this get solved, Al?
Well, it's actually not that complicated. What we've done, and I worked with Mitch Spate and Joan Marie Jackson, whose house in Greenfield was threatened with tax title taking, and they managed to get it back just in the squeak of time. They managed to keep the wolves at bay by paying every penny of back taxes plus all the legal fees. It came to approximately $55,000 that was difficult for them to come up with, but they managed to do it with some help from friends, by the way. But they are joining me. We went to see the mayor about 2 months ago. We've met with the City Council Ways and Means Committee. We've given them a list of 10 recommendations about how to resolve this, one of which is to very simply say that the city of Greenfield, and we hope all cities in the Commonwealth and towns, will renounce the collection of surplus equity and just say, we will no longer use Chapter 60, Section 53 to collect surplus. We will willingly, voluntarily give up the excess collection and give it back to the ex-homeowner as a matter of ethical principle of governance. So we don't want to be part of this. Even though it's still on the books, we are not going to implement it. Or we also have the choice that any city or town could go to district court, and if you owed back taxes, they could take you to district court and file a case against you for back payment of those taxes without any claim on your equity. Mm-hmm. So there are lots of alternatives. We also asked the mayor to just do one very basic educational thing, is take your website and put on the city's website a complete explanation of what title taking means, how home equity collection works, and what you can do to redeem your property to prevent losing your title. None of that is there now. And the mayor said, well, maybe this is good timing because we're going to be revamping our website. I said, well, please, don't put up another website without it, because there's nothing on the tax collector's website. There's nothing on the treasurer's website that says anything about title taking. All they tell you is that your taxes are due to be paid on time, but it says nothing about what happens to you if you don't pay.
Well, the thing is, they don't have to wait to revamp the website.
I know, but it's fine. They said they would have a new website, Drew, by the fall. Well, we'll see, but we have not heard anything yet from the mayor in response. We asked her a very simple question. If you owed me $100, do you think it would be right for me to demand that you pay me $1,000? And she said, let me think about it.
What's there to think about?
Well, that's what we kept saying to everybody that we asked. When we asked that basic question, is it right for anybody, I don't care whether you're a city or a town or run a barber shop or whatever, any occupation you're in, if somebody borrows money from you, do you have the right to collect more than the payment and the interest owed and any collection costs, any right to collect a penny more? And usually people say, well, God, no, absolutely not. I wouldn't do that. You pay me what you owe me and we're square.
Right. That's
I'm
fair.
whole again. I'm whole.
That's fair.
But that's what is so mind-boggling about why we're having to spend time. Because I did, as a naive homeowner, I had no idea that any of this was going on in Greenfield until my friends got ensnared. And then when I first wrote about it several months ago, all of a sudden people are telling me, hey, Al, I had no idea that this was the case. I'm so glad you wrote about this because I didn't know this goes on. Greenfield does this? I said, yeah, every town does it. So now people are up in arms, and there's been several stories in the Globe about people who have had their homes lost. One woman in the eastern part of the state actually had a lawyer represent her to go after the city of Boston had hired a firm they bundled all their tax liens, gave it to this private company and said, you pay us some money and then you go and collect on these people, and the money's all yours. So the third-party company started collecting on these people, and this woman who had her house actually taken by that third-party company lost $112,000 in equity, and with the help of a lawyer, the company in a settlement gave her back $85,000, which allowed her to then go out and have money to rent or buy something to live in instead of being homeless. So there's a lot that can be done, but the first step is educating people through shows like this, thank you, that says, this is what's happening, this is why it's wrong, and here's how you can change it. And we told the mayor and the city council all these recommendations about exactly how they can do it, so they couldn't come back to us and say, well, yeah, you threw a pretty problem in our lap, but what are we supposed to do about it?
You gave them solutions.
You look at what the solutions are and you tell us what you're going to do about it.
So that's on a town by town, as a policy, a town can say, this, we're not doing this. Our policy is not to do this.
Right.
However, that doesn't help everybody in Massachusetts.
Yes, good point. So one of the things that we also are urging everybody that we talk to is that there is a statute that needs to be repealed. That section that I mentioned, Chapter 60, Section 53, needs to be repealed, and the general court needs to do that. So we're trying to tell all the senators and all the representatives, all 200 of them, that this is something that you need to do for the homeowners in your district. Your constituents are being stolen from legally because you haven't changed this law that everybody has, I think, just been ignorant of.
Well, so does Adam Hines know about this, for instance?
Well, that's a good one to bring up. As the chairman of the Revenue Committee, it sat in his committee for a year and a half and died there this year. It'll now have to be refiled in January for a 2-year cycle. Adam Hines had the jurisdiction and the ability to move the bill, but didn't. It just stayed there. And we've brought this, some of his people, his constituents, people from Greenfield too, because he represents West Franklin County, asked him to move the bill. And all I can tell you is that when the time ran out on the session, which technically runs till the end of December, that bill is just stuck. So we're going to have to see it refiled and go through the whole process over again of having committee hearings and go through the Ways and Means Committee, et cetera. So this is an example. These lawmakers, I think, Adam should have and could have known that this bill was in his committee. And
well, it seems like low-lying fruit because it's so on the face of it. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's obscenely immoral. There's no wiggle room. Oh, well, maybe you don't take what you're not owed.
Well, this is not only low-lying fruit. It's fallen from the tree and is rotting, and they should just pick it up and throw it in the trash because it should not be part of our statutes. Only 11 states left in this country still do this. We're one of them.
And that's
Progressive Massachusetts is one of 11 states that has this horrible law that's anti-homeowner.
Well, it's an opportunity to fix it, but I'm just ashamed in a way that this is an issue. This is a no-brainer, Al. I'm sorry, it's just a no-brainer.
Well, maybe people say that's why it doesn't get through the legislature, because there are no-brainers there. I really think, I was a lobbyist for 30 years on Beacon Hill, so I know a little bit about how the State House works. It's often not negligence. It's often that people just don't know. There's this, little corner of the law that they've not read. They're not tax lawyers. They're not real estate agents. So they don't know. Most rank and file lawmakers, when I tell them about this law, say, well, let me look into that. I'm not aware of that law. There are others who do know that it's there, like the Mass Municipal Association. They should be ashamed of themselves for putting their profit ahead of the well-being of their constituents. But I do think that we will win this. I do think it's going to go.
Well, I sure hope so, because one of the other things that occurs to me is that if you are politically connected and you owe taxes, mm-hmm. I bet you're going to be given every opportunity to pay back those taxes and not have your home taken.
Everybody in Greenfield can tell you stories of people in power who were negligent in paying their taxes and went for years owning property that they never paid up. And I don't condone that. I mean, I've had people say to me, well, Al, are you in favor of people not paying their taxes? I said, that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about, I'm not in favor of towns collecting more than they're owed. That's the principle. I want everybody. I've paid my taxes in this community for 40 years. I pay mine in advance. I'm never delinquent. So I'm a strong proponent that I should pay my share, but I don't want to pay more than my share, and I don't want to be collected in more than I owe. Those are principles that are equally important. Just as it's important that I pay, it's important that I not overpay.
It just seems so obvious.
Yeah.
And yeah, I know this is how things are. There are power structures in place that tend to support the people in power. But the fact that this has been publicized means that somebody's going to want to get ahead of this and be the hero. So you'd think that there's be some politician going, yeah, this is something that, who wouldn't want to be, tell me a politician that doesn't want to be on the side of something that is so easy.
Well, there were a number of lawmakers, none of them from Western Mass, that sponsored, filed the bill that would repeal this home equity theft. And as I say, that bill got stuck very early on in the Revenue Committee. And I have not heard from any of our lawmakers since we started publicizing this in April. Not a single one has called me up and said, how do we get this done? How do we accomplish this? You got a fact sheet on this bill that you're talking about? None of them. So, I mean, I know they're busy people and they're running for re-election, but especially in a re-election period, this is a great talking point for them on the campaign trail to say, and I'm going to get rid of home equity theft. It's going to stop if you elect me.
Because it's totally nonpartisan. It doesn't matter if you have an R next to your name or a D next to your name or an I or unenrolled or whatever. This affects people who are actually going through hard times. I mean, think about COVID. How many people lost income because of COVID, and they've had to struggle to make ends meet?
And if I was out at a campaign organization and I said, let me see a show of hands, how many of you in this room own a house? And then I said to them, how many of you have ever had a late tax bill, and do you know what happens to you when you are delinquent on your taxes? Very few hands would go up, because people know, well, I know I'm supposed to pay it, but I don't understand how it works.
Right.
And there is preferential treatment. One of the things that we recommended, by the way, in our list of recommendations for Greenfield was set up a standard repayment format so that whether it's me or somebody else, that we're all playing by the same rules, a certain amount of money down. When you enter into a repayment plan, that what the state recommends is 25% down, and then a 2 or 3 year period. I think the period is no longer than 5 years of payback, so that you're not wondering, am I being discriminated against by this payment plan compared to so and so wealthy person who's obviously got some ties with the people in politics? No, that's all. Everybody plays by the same rules. Everybody is expected to pay, because nobody gets a free ride. But everybody is not expected to pay more than they owe. So it's not that complicated.
Now, in your experience talking to the town council, were they receptive to what you were talking about?
We had we met with the Ways and Means Committee in August of 2022, and we spent about an hour presenting the case. Myself and Mitch and Joan spent about an hour presenting it, and they were very appreciative of the information, because this is stuff that they would have to research from scratch, because there's nothing easily written about it. But I saw one study that was done by a UMass professor in Dartmouth several years ago that estimated that every year the Commonwealth, through all of its cities and towns, collects about $50 million a year in home equity that is not owed to them. So this is a $50 million problem every year, and it just keeps going and compounding and getting worse.
Well, and the thing is you take a look at, the towns are always looking for revenue. I mean, that's what a town administrator's job is. We got to find more revenue. Right. That's what a mayor's job is. We got to find, they talk about expanding the tax base all the time. And that's not always easy to do. So and healthcare costs go up every year. So you can't even give raises hardly, because your expenses are going up. So I understand there's a lot of pressure on these towns and cities to find a way to pay the bills, to keep the lights on, keep the roads paved, keep people employed.
Right.
But they're the servants of the taxpayers, the servants of the people that live in the community. I mean, they're working for the community. This is robbing Peter to pay Paul. Except, I mean, it's even beyond that.
So are you running for state rep?
No, I'm not.
I wish you would. It was the perfect speech, and I think this is what people need to be saying. That this is the problem, is that this is something that they can stop. It's not like some problems are insoluble.
Right.
You just say, well, okay.
We agree to disagree.
Climate change drives me crazy because it's so massive. This is local. This is so local. You can do this in your community. You can stop taking this equity. You can get your state legislators to stop, to take the law off the books, and we could have it done by, next February, March, April. I mean, no reason why this can't happen at the beginning of the next session.
For instance, I understand that politicians, their job is politics. They're supposed to find a way to get people to come together and solve problems.
Right.
Because there's innumerable problems, and you can't solve them all, and mistakes are made. You have humans doing jobs that they're not necessarily trained for. They were elected to do a job. That doesn't mean they understand all the nuances that go into it. But if you can't see an opportunity as a politician, like Roxanne Wiedegartner, the mayor of Greenfield, should look at this and go, oh my God, I've made some missteps here and there, and that's part of the growth process, but this is something that is so easy to understand. I could present this and write a letter to the editor or a My Turn column. I could ask to have it put on the agenda for the town council, and we can get this done. And I mean, how do you not look good doing that?
Well, that's why if I saw the name of my tax collector on a private website saying, we're pleased with these auctions, we made a lot more profit than we ever thought, I'd be embarrassed. And I would sit down with my tax collector and say, I don't want this. I'd like you to take your name off that website, and let's let them, the private business, let them, make their own way with their business. We don't need to help them. And in the meantime, let's think about how we can make this process understood by the average homeowner so that we don't have another 41 properties being taken.
So I have a question, and this is where my ignorance shines through. What's the Homestead Act, and how does that relate to this?
Well, the Homestead Act just prevents you as a homeowner from a lawsuit, but it doesn't prevent you from not paying your taxes. Like if somebody sues you, a third party sues you because you didn't pay a bill, or there was a slip and fall in your house, or some awful thing that happened, you've got some rights under the Homestead Act to be protected from having your home taken from you. But this is a case where this is a bill that you owe,
right,
and that you have to pay. And under state law, everybody is agreeing, yes, you should pay it. So the Homestead Act is something you should have. Every home should be covered by that, but it has no influence about delinquent taxes paid. You still have to pay your taxes. This does not prevent a city or town through another section of the state law from taking your title, and that's what we're trying to get off the books.
Okay. Because the other thing that I notice is that there's always been in different towns that one dilapidated building that for years sits there as an eyesore, and somehow you think, why doesn't the town do something?
Right, and then the other thing that I'm very sympathetic to is I've had city officials say to me, we know people who are absentee landlords. They don't even live in Massachusetts, and year after year they pay their taxes at the last minute. I said, well, at least they pay them at the last minute, but even if they become delinquent, they are subject to the tax title taking, but they're also subject to, the city has a right to collect its taxes. I don't care whether they live in New Jersey or California. Those landlords can have their houses attached, a lien put on their house, and you can go to district court and get those back taxes. I don't care how much money they have, or who they are, or what their title is, and where they live, what their address is, in or out of Massachusetts. We can still go after them. So I'm sympathetic to the people who say, there are these landlords who don't pay. We can take their property if we want to. We can go to district court, and if the court rules that they haven't paid their taxes for years, they're not going to hold on to that property. But we shouldn't be able to take their excess equity if there is any. Okay, so on a local level, well, we have to wrap up. So let's just make this brief. On the local level, you can talk to your, if you have a mayor, you can talk to your mayor or your town councilor or select board or whomever. Yes.
And ask to have the policy changed locally, wherever you live. Yeah, we want to get rid of home equity theft. Help us do that. Okay, so that's action that people can take in their own community, wherever they are. Yes. On the state level, we need to get Adam Hines, apparently that's the guy to talk to. Well, all the members of the general court, all 200, they should all be approached by their individual constituents. Okay. So if Hines is my senator, I should go to him, but Senator Comerford is my senator, I should go to her. Okay, very good. Well, Al, thank you for coming on and helping to educate the public and myself, because this is something I had no idea about until we almost lost the studio. I'm Drew Hutchison. Thank you for joining me. This is Local Bias, and take care.